Even by 820, the Samanids had begun the process of exercising independent authority in Transoxiana and Greater Khorasan, and the succeeding Safarid dynasty of Iran. The Safarids, from Khorasan, nearly seized Baghdad in 876, and the Tulunids took control of most of Syria. The trend of weakening of the central power and strengthening of the minor caliphates on the periphery continued. An exception was the 10-year period of al-Mutawakkil's rule. 892 to 902. He brought parts of Egypt, Syria, and Khorasan back into Abbasid control, especially after the anarchy at Samarra, 861 to 870. The Abbasid central government was weakened and centrifugal tendencies became more prominent in the Caliphate's provinces. By the early 10th century, the Abbasids almost lost control of Iraq to various emirs, and the Caliph al-Radi, 934 to 941, was forced to acknowledge their power by creating the position of Prince of Princes, Emir al-Umara. In addition, the power of the Mamluks steadily grew, reaching a climax when al-Radi was constrained to hand over most of the royal functions to the non-Arab Muhammad ibn Iq. Al-Musta'fi had a short reign from 944 to 946. And it was during this period that the Persian faction known as the Buyids from Daylem swept into power and assumed control over the bureaucracy in Baghdad. According to the history of Miskawayh, they began distributing iqtas fiefs in the form of tax farms to their supporters. This period of localized secular control was to last nearly 100 years. The loss of Abbasid power to the Buyids would shift as the Seljuks would take over from the Persians. At the end of the 8th century, the Abbasids found they could no longer keep together a polity from Baghdad, which had grown larger than that of Rome. In 793 the Zaydi-Shia dynasty of Idrisids set up a state from Fez in Morocco, while a family of governors under the Abbasids became increasingly independent until they founded the Aqlabid Emirate from the 830s. Al-Muta'sim started the downward slide by using non-Muslim mercenaries in his personal army. Also during this period, officers started assassinating superiors with whom they disagreed, in particular the caliphs. By the 870s, Egypt became autonomous under Ahmad ibn Tulun. In the east, governors decreased their ties to the center as well. The Safarids of Herat and the Samanids of Bukhara began breaking away around this time, cultivating a much more Persianate culture and statecraft. Only the central lands of Mesopotamia were under direct Abbasid control, with Palestine and the Hijaz often managed by the Tulunids. Byzantium, for its part, had begun to push Arab Muslims farther east in Anatolia. By the 920s, North Africa was lost to the Fatimid dynasty, a Shia sect tracing its roots to Muhammad's daughter Fatima. The Fatimid dynasty took control of Idrisid and Aqlabid domains, advanced to Egypt in 969, and established their capital near Fustat in Cairo, which they built as a bastion of Shia learning and politics. By 1000 they had become the chief political and ideological challenge to Sunni Islam and the Abbasids, who by this time had fragmented into several governorships that, while recognizing caliphal authority from Baghdad, remained mostly autonomous. The caliph himself was under protection of the Buyid emirs who possessed all of Iraq and western Iran, and were quietly Shia in their sympathies. Quote, outside Iraq, all the autonomous provinces slowly took on the characteristic of de facto states with hereditary rulers, armies, and revenues and operated under only nominal caliph suzerainty, which may not necessarily be reflected by any contribution to the treasury, such as the Sumro emirs that had gained control of Sind and ruled the entire province from their capital of Mansoura. Mahmud of Ghazni took the title of sultan, as opposed to the emir that had been in more common usage, signifying the Ghaznavid Empire's independence from caliphal authority. Despite Mahmud's ostentatious displays of Sunni orthodoxy and ritual submission to the caliph in the 11th century, the loss of respect for the caliphs continued, as some Islamic rulers no longer mentioned the caliph's name in the Friday khutbah, or struck it off the coinage. The Isma'ili Fatimid dynasty of Cairo contested the Abbasids for the titular authority of the Islamic Ummah. They commanded some support in the Shia sections of Baghdad, such as Kark. Although Baghdad was the city most closely connected to the caliphate, even in the Buyid and Seljuq eras, the challenge of the Fatimids only ended with their downfall in the 12th century.